Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So this video today is kind of about New Year's resolutions. I don't usually kind of go in for these kinds of things. To me, it's more about like building better habits and stuff like that. But if you've ever set like a hobby related New Year's resolution and quietly abandoned it, this might be the video for you. Now, I promise you, I'm not about to start trying to be a self-help YouTube channel. That's not my MO, it's not my grift. And if you came to my YouTube channel looking for advice on how to live your life, brother, you're in the wrong place. So most hobby resolutions sound something like this. I want to paint an entire 2,000 point army of Warhammer, or I want to win the local tournaments, or I don't know, I want to win a painting competition. And there are these like lofty goals, which are brilliant aspirationally, but they can create feelings of failure if we cleave to them too closely. So the point of this video today is how can we set happy, healthy hobby goals this year? So I keep a journal. You don't have to keep a journal. It just helps me. But the point is, in that journal, I had some goals written down, goals for all kinds of areas of my life and things that I wanted to achieve and needed to get done and things like that. So I managed to tick most of those things off throughout the previous year. I said I wasn't going to get too self-helpy, but something that stuck with me from a book called Atomic Habits, which I read some years ago, to be honest. So the underpinning idea of this book is set systems, not goals. So one of the ideas behind the book is an identity shift. So rather than talking about painting the 2,000 point army, you want to talk about being the kind of person that paints, or being the kind of person that paints every day or 3 times a week or whatever you can manage. The point is, if you want to run a marathon, you don't look at the finish line several kilometers in the distance. You just take one step at a time. So rather than telling yourself, I need to paint this 2,000 point army, tell yourself, I'm the kind of person that paints regularly, and just take it 1 minute at a time or a unit at a time or whatever you can manage in the time that you can give yourself. So one of the first things that might help us succeed with our hobby resolutions or improve and get better with our hobby habits might be to change our environment in whatever little ways that we can. So the best thing you can do is remove friction. You want to make it as easy as possible to do the thing. Now, I understand this probably kind of sounds rich coming from me in an environment that I've kind of tailored around me. You know, obviously I've got an office that's taken me a lot of time to build up, but it wasn't always like this. Yeah. I used to have a PC desk. It was probably about the same width as my cutting mat is now. And that was in the corner of a loft space, which I shared with my wife. It's kind of like an open plan loft space. Now, at the time, I really did struggle to get any hobby done at all, because this desk was also my PC, and I was a teacher at the time as well. So I was teaching lessons from home. It was during COVID. So I had like stacks of papers, everything like that, until I put an order in for a wet palette and a box of paints. Now this wasn't because the wet palette kept the paints active for longer or anything to do with the actual function of the wet palette. It was because of this like little elastic band that came with it, as well as a little plastic tray that came with the paints. The little plastic tray allowed me to sort of keep my active paints in one place in a little bund, in a little pot. So I didn't have them dotted around, or I didn't have them in a rack or in a drawer or anything like that. They were just in a little plastic tray ready to go. And the elastic band on the wet palette allowed me to keep all my brushes ready to go on the back of the palette itself. So together, probably combined, took up the space of an A4 piece of paper. And between that and a tile, which I still have like over there, Um, I was able to reduce friction. I was able to make things easily accessible enough, easy enough for me to begin to hobby more regularly whilst I was sitting at my desk and stuff like that. Now, me and my missus have been talking about babies this year, so I don't know how long I'm going to be able to keep hold of my hard-won hobby space. But as long as I've got my little plastic bund, my wet palette with my brushes on the back, I should hopefully be able to maintain some decent habits. So the point is, whatever you're trying to improve at, you need to reduce friction as much as possible in your environment. For me, all it took was a little sort of plastic container to put my active paints in and brushes ready to go. One of the biggest pieces of advice I could give anyone when it comes to setting any kind of goals or resolutions or trying to form habits is set the bar low. It sounds simple, but set the bar low is a real key piece of advice here. I'll carry on with painting as a sort of an example, as I find hobbyists generally fall into like one of two categories. You're either like a perfectionist who wants every painting session to be like the magnum opus, or you are trying to chase the most hyper efficient way of tackling a project or a specific problem. And the problem here is both of these approaches are going to mess you up in like slightly different ways. Obviously, the perfectionist is going to spend forever on a small piece of a project, and then the guy who's like after hyper efficiency, well, he might not even sit down to paint if he knows he can't like oil wash and panel line like a whole unit of 30 dudes in one sitting. So both of those things can kind of hamper your progress in a way which is really common, I find, when it comes to hobbyists. So the point is, set the bar low. Base coat like a single limb or a shoulder pad. Wax some washes on some metals. Clean some mold lines off some minis. You don't need to be moving heaven and earth every time you sit down to paint. So like one model, one colour, 5 minutes. Once you've started, you might just carry on going. So there's another tip here called habit stacking. You sit down to stroke your cat, for example. You might record a YouTube video. Habit stacking is kind of like linking the thing that you want to do with something that you're already doing. The point is, the best time to paint might not be when you've got motivation, because intrinsically you're not going to have motivation all the time. It'll occur more naturally if you just pair it with something you already do. I love a cup of coffee or tea in the morning, especially if I get up before my wife. And I always drink it in this chair because I know that my hobby stuff is to hand, and automatically sort of begin the process of hobbying because I've stacked the habit of getting my morning cup of coffee or my morning cup of tea with hobbying. So can kind of help. So after dinner, after you've put the kids to bed, after work, all these sort of things that you have to do in your day-to-day life can be linked with hobby in some way, even if you only get 5-10 minutes after completing those more important tasks. The point is you can link them and stack the habits. So in terms of what I'd like to personally set myself as a little bit of a hobby resolution, I think I would like to paint 3 times a week. No expectations on the amount of painting, the length of time I'm painting, the models that I'm painting. I just like to carve out 3 individual slots a week where I can sit down and paint. And I would also like to get to the end of the year with an upload a month for my YouTube channel. And I'm going to give myself a little bit of leeway here and say it just has to be 12 individual uploads. It doesn't have to be bang, bang, bang. So guys, I'd like to close with what I think is the most important message attached to this video. And this hobby is not about completion. It's about enjoyment. If you show up consistently, you can achieve great things. but it's more important to be present. If you're into the sort of competitive side of skirmish war games and kill team and stuff like that, like I am, you need to keep in mind that true victory can be achieved through the lessons learned, even in games that you lose, as well as kind of the friends you make along the way. That sounds so lame. And when it comes to painting, try and be more present, try and enjoy the process. Some people would kill to have enough time on their hands to paint minis, stuff like that. And more importantly, we need to be more kind to ourselves, I think, generally across the board, but specifically in my little niche with wargaming and painting and stuff like that. I see a lot of people beating themselves up all the time about these random goals and things like that. The world we live in is hard enough. If the only thing you can do after a day of hard graft, working away, doing whatever you do, looking after your family, supporting your family, just supporting yourself, if the only thing you can do at the end of that day is sit down and take a breath, so be it. That's all you had in the tank for the day, and that's sound. Don't shud yourself about weird, extraneous goals and shit. You're exactly where you need to be.